She sat at the corner table of the restaurant, fingers nervously twisting the napkin into tiny folds, pretending she wasn't counting the minutes. It wasn't the first time she had waited like this, but somehow tonight felt heavier, like the night had already decided its outcome before it even began. The waiter approached twice to ask if she wanted anything while she waited, and both times she smiled politely and said she was fine, even though the water in front of her had grown warm untouched. When the man finally arrived, she recognized him from the description: a pressed smile, expensive watch, confidence that didn't feel warm but sharp like glass. He didn't sit fully before his eyes swept her once, judging not her soul but her worth in seconds. She straightened unconsciously, her heart already shrinking. He didn't waste time on small talk. He sighed, leaned back, and said words that sounded rehearsed from too many similar evenings. "You seem nice, but not really my type. I wanted someone with more spark, more presence." He said it casually, like ordering tea instead of coffee. She felt the sting but held her chin high, nodding as though she understood some logic only he could see. He added, almost kindly, "You look tired, life must be heavy on you." "I'm looking for someone more exciting." The word echoed in her head like a bell in an empty hall. She laughed softly so she wouldn't cry, told him it was okay, even thanked him for being honest, though honesty had never felt so cruel. When he stood up and walked away, she stayed seated, pretending she still had a reason to be there. People noticed. They always did when someone was rejected publicly, even if the rejection was wrapped in quiet voices and careful smiles. She could feel glances landing and then politely moving away. Her reflection in the glass window looked like a stranger who had forgotten how to glow. She whispered to herself that it was fine, that she was used to it, that expectations hurt only when you let them grow wings. She gathered her purse slowly, holding back tears, promising she would not cry in a restaurant bathroom again. Just when she stood up to leave, the chair behind her scraped the floor, and a deep voice said, "Excuse me, miss." He was tall, composed, with eyes that didn't scan her like a product but rested on her like a question. A child sat beside him, a small boy drawing trains on a paper placemat. The man wore a suit too simple for its price, the calm confidence of someone who had nothing to prove to anyone. "I'm sorry," he said gently, "I couldn't help overhearing." She tried to smile, embarrassed that strangers had witnessed her humiliation. He continued, "That man didn't reject you. He couldn't recognize you." The words landed with unexpected warmth, like a blanket over shaking shoulders. She blinked, surprised by kindness where she expected pity. The little boy tugged his sleeve and whispered, not very quietly, "Dad, is she the princess you said hasn't discovered her crown yet?" Her eyes widened, then softened at the boy's innocent sincerity. The man chuckled, slightly embarrassed, but did not deny it. He invited her to sit with a small gesture, leaving the choice entirely hers. She hesitated for a heartbeat, then sat because his presence did not press or crowd her, it simply welcomed her. For the first time that evening, she breathed without the weight on her chest. Their conversation didn't begin with resumes or achievements. It began with laughter over the child's serious explanation of dinosaurs and why pancakes were better than feelings. She learned he was a single father, the word single carrying stories he did not force upon her. She noticed how he listened, fully, without checking his phone, without scanning the room for someone better. When she spoke, he didn't hurry to reply, he waited as though every word she said deserved its own space. She realized she had forgotten what it felt like to be seen instead of measured. Eventually, the question formed on her lips, half broken, half brave. "Did you see what happened?" He nodded. She waited for the gentle advice or the tired clichés about self-love. Instead, he said, "Yes. And I saw a woman who stayed kind even when someone mistook her worth." His voice had no pity, only respect. He told her life had taught him that real value isn't loud. Sometimes it sits quietly and gets overlooked by people who only notice the glitter. His son added with a grin, "Glitter is itchy anyway." She laughed until her eyes watered, and none of those tears were from pain. The restaurant began to empty as night wrapped itself around the windows. Lights softened, and conversations blended into background murmur. He shared pieces of his life gently, how being a CEO meant people rarely spoke to him honestly, how success was loud but loneliness was louder. He talked about losing, about rebuilding, about learning to cook badly because a small boy needed pancakes shaped like planets. She shared her own broken pieces, rejections, doubts, the feeling of being almost enough. He never interrupted, never fixed, simply stayed. The man who had rejected her earlier passed by the door on his way out with another woman's number already in his phone. For a second, the old ache rose, then faded unexpectedly. She realized she no longer cared for his approval. The real shift wasn't dramatic, just quiet and steady like sunrise. She had walked in thinking she needed to be chosen, now she understood she had always been worthy, even when unrecognized. The single dad watched her expression soften and knew she had crossed some invisible bridge inside herself. When the waiter brought the bill, she instinctively reached for her purse, embarrassed to assume anything. The man smiled and shook his head gently. "Allow me," he said, "not because I think you need saving, but because tonight I want to celebrate the fact that you exist, and my son already declared you royalty." The boy nodded seriously in agreement. She didn't argue. Instead, she let herself accept kindness without suspicion, something she rarely allowed. Accepting kindness felt strangely brave. Outside, the night air was cool and smelled faintly of rain. Streetlights stretched shadows across the pavement, and cars hummed by like distant thoughts. She wrapped her arms around herself, unsure what came next, not wanting to assume anything more from life than this gentle evening. He stood beside her, close but not intrusive, hands in his pockets as though anchoring himself from saying too much too fast. He turned to her, voice calm but certain. "You shouldn't be going home alone tonight, not after a day like this." Her heart skipped, old alarms flickering for a moment, but his eyes carried no hunger, only care. He continued softly, "What I mean is, let me drive you home. Safely, with respect, no expectations." Then he added the words that wrapped safely around her shaken spirit, "I'll take her home." They weren't possessive, they were protective. He wasn't claiming her, he was promising she wouldn't face the night feeling discarded. Something inside her that had been trembling all evening finally stilled. The ride was quiet in the best way. The boy fell asleep in the back seat, small head resting against the window, the city lights dancing across his dreams. Music played low, and the silence between them felt full, not empty. She watched the world blur past and realized she wasn't thinking about the man who had rejected her anymore. She was thinking about warm laughter, patient listening, and the strange possibility of gentle beginnings. When the car stopped in front of her building, she hesitated before opening the door, wishing the moment would not end but not daring to ask it to stay. He looked at her with that same steady calm and said, "You don't need to change to be chosen. The right person will recognize you as you are." She nodded, tears finally slipping free, not because she was broken, but because she finally felt safe enough to feel everything. He didn't wipe them away, he respected them. "Good night," he said softly. She stepped out of the car different from the woman who had walked into that restaurant. Rejection no longer felt like proof of inadequacy but like redirection towards something truer. She watched the car drive away, the taillights glowing like two small promises fading into the night. She whispered to herself, not as hope but as certainty, "One day someone won't just take me home, they'll choose to stay." And somewhere down the road, a single dad drove with a sleeping child and a quiet smile, knowing some stories don't begin with fireworks but with gentle words spoken at the right time.